So welcome. My name is Toby Lechitzenden, and I am the network co-lead at the Wellbeing Economy Alliance. I'm very excited to be with you all. And this is our WEAll talk for July. We are partnering with the Inner Development Goals. Every single month, we get to do a WEAll talk on a different topic that is related to the well-being of people and planet. And a lot of our work is around systemic change, outer change, transformation, policy, those types of topics. But today we are approaching something different. We are going to be looking at inner well-being and what does that mean? And the people at Inner Development Goals have been longtime friends and partners, I guess, in different capacities over many years. And I think we've just actually this year formalized our partnership to showcase that inner change is so interconnected with outer change and vice versa. And so this is what we're going to be diving into today's topic. Please bear in mind that this is very participatory. Our WEAll talks, we don't do webinars, we do meetings. So that's why you're all in the room. You can see one another. You can chat to one another in the chat. I always say the chat is where it's at. Get each other's contacts, make connections, because this is really what builds our movements going forward. So I'm going to go into introducing our speaker today. We will also hopefully have a representative from WEAll who's also going to be sharing a little bit from a WEAll perspective what inner development means for our WEAll mission. But let us start with Dr. Fredrik. And I'm going to read your intro because I want to make sure that I do it justice. So give me a second. So Dr. Fredrik Lindencrona has a PhD, and he is one of the people initiating the IDG initiative. He is the head of research and co-creation, and he is a licensed psychologist who has been engaged in policy and systems work focusing on human capabilities and well-being for driving transformation. And he's been doing this for more than 20 years and engaged in international collaboration and international entities. He's worked with the OECD, with the WHO, with the EU, as well as several countries and cities too. And we're really excited to have you, Dr. Fredrik, I'm not used to saying Dr. Fredrik, but I know you, are just the friendliest person. So I really want to encourage everybody here today that we really want to shy away from like this top-down knowledge sharing approach. This is participatory. So we will have a presentation by Dr. Fredrik, but then do know that this is going to require your input and engagement towards the end of the conversation as well. So over to you. I'm going to pop you on spotlight for everybody so that we can see you just for the beginning of this presentation.
Such a wonderful, warm welcome, Tobina. I am more than excited because I have actually my heart very much in the well-being economy space, and the reason I was part of founding the IDGs, and I'll speak more about it, was actually I was leading a regional strategic development process for the capital of Stockholm, Sweden, where we wanted to make a well-being economy kind of approach to long-term economic development, and we lacked a language. We lacked a language of what is the way to convey to policy makers and to other decision makers around the fact that human capabilities and well-being is the core for all kinds of transformation that we need to do. It's not that it's only the value we want to sort of see affected, but also it's so central. The tasks we are embarking on are so existential and so overwhelming. So we have to be working at the top of our human collective capability. And doing that is what's inspired the whole process around the Inner Development Goals. So it feels to be home with you guys. I'm very, very pleased, Tobila, for having the opportunity to share and discuss this with you. I will do a quick kind of fast power through with what we need to say to sort of look at what IDGs are, why they are there, what we feel that they might be, and also they're part of the journey, which we're all going to be taking together. I see many people around in this community who are from the IDG community already, and others who are more from the well-being or health growth communities. And I think we all just find a best way forward is by joining forces. We're bringing different pieces and bits of the puzzle together. So I'm trying to address that, and let's see how we can do some service of where we are and what our assessment of what we need to do. Then I'm going to bring you into helping us to think through what you feel is really core elements to this work, and also looking ahead together. So let me start. Lean back, and I'm going to take you on a journey of how we can understand this predicament we're in at the moment. So the inner development goals. Yeah, do you see it?
Morning, buddy.
Okay. Do you see it, Tobile?
Yes, we do. Sorry,
Yeah,
I think someone's unmuted.
yeah. So that's all right. That's the worst. The transformational skills for sustainable development was something we worked through. We felt that we wanted to do something with what we know. About 4 years ago, technically we celebrated the third year, because we also see our development of the first framework as one anniversary. We celebrated that in May 20, now last, I think it was 14th. But basically we are saying that there are no human challenges cannot address as good as we should if we don't work together in the best possible ways. And that means bringing sectors together, organizations together, people in organizations together, countries together, disciplines together, and really finding and never, I think, been in the demand of such a large-scale transformative process to actually save ourselves, the world, and everyone in it. So this is really a joint challenge and a journey which we're trying to learn, most also from people who have been here before us. Many of the indigenous groups that we work with across the globe already have this wisdom. It's not, and something we almost have unlearned in many parts of the world that we had to relearn to get anywhere, to where we're going to go in this. But why do we need IDGs? Well, we certainly do appreciate, and we certainly have 193 countries signing up under the SDGs in 2015. We have the donut and other kinds of approaches, really important concepts, really important ways of working across the globe. But still, here is where we find ourselves. UNDP's latest Human Development Report certainly is not very... it's a really thoughtful piece, I think, as many of their work has been, and it really shows how really challenging we are having the situation. One of the most striking data points is that we've actually been able to improve and minimize, or not, at least shrinking the difference between very high HDI, Human Development Index countries, and low such for about 2 decades. But this, as you see by the red one, is not holding up any longer. We're seeing growing divides in human development across countries. And that's a very, very, very frightening information to add to what I already showed. So we certainly do have to improve. We don't want to be on this brink. We don't want to be in a situation where this can break down all the time. And it's really challenging for ourselves, our children, and their children as well. But why are we here? Maybe have a look at this beautiful Calvin and Hobbes cartoon. So Calvin is in his really red cart and wants to drive fast. He wants to drive fast, not see the problems, not seeing the problems, because they also all requires a personal change. And that's not fun. That's rough. And his solution to that problem is to be willfully stupid and find happiness to be about short-term stupid self-interest. When you do that, you can go very fast. You can lose sight, navigation, and capability to go anywhere you really want to. You can enjoy the ride for a while. Then, boom, this is not really where we're going to go. So take a second to think about this question, and you just maybe make a mental note. What is critical to create the world we want to live in now and for our children, grandchildren, and generations to come? Take a second or two, just to, what are some of the things there? Maybe what is the conversation we hear about it? Some maybe thought about technology and energy transformation, or new food systems, or new approaches to what we're actually eating, or how we cultivate the land, or what have you. Others might have thought about investments and the need for money in different ways. They're, of course, certainly extremely important, but actually the UN 2019 report was clear. It's the human capabilities and well-being that matters most. How can that be? Well, the next follow-up independent panels showed us that we do just have to live with, we're going to be going through transformation. They're inevitable, but its course and directions of speed are not. And what their conclusions are is that all the different economic, social, ecological, and other securities that we all need, they are interconnected, interdependent, and impossible to separate. They are, that also means that we have to find a radically increasing and improving our way to collaborate. And what is very striking also in their last reflections is that we really actively have to see hope and agency as the core of this transformation. But that's not been the case all the time. So Harin Nagrenda was really clear on this before in saying that a lot of the writings about sustainability has been presenting people only as the problem, not as the collective source of strength that we have to be. We may have behaved as causing the problems, and we certainly have, but we can't end there. We have to find a way to get people to drive the necessary transformation. We have to go behind and below what's visible maybe on the surface around events to deeper layers of how we function. And one of the things that UNDP was saying I like a lot is that if equity and innovation and stewardship become central to what it means to lead a good life, then human flourishing can happen alongside easing planetary boundaries. And a very good book I really have enjoyed since it came out in 2020, The Wellbeing, Expanding the Definition of Progress by Alonso Plau and others, was clearly saying, I was reviewing again, traveling the last couple of weeks, and Claire Nelson was saying something beautiful. I've never met Claire, but I really, really think this is helpful and inspiring. And it absolutely happened almost at the same time we were sitting in the kitchen in Stockholm to think about the same kind of things around the need for leaders to take roles to drive this in a very different way. So again, we are this ecosystem. We're bringing everyone together to try to scale this across, and we're bringing different sources of funding. We are developing by relationship building. I saw my dear friend Daniel Harris, who is our head of business partnership in the call today. So he is making an enormous progress around really the most innovative and transformative businesses around the world who wants to be in this game. And I'm working a lot with academic participants or partners. We have a lot of other global NGOs, because we do think that everyone finds their own way of bringing this into their own space. We have to, make it possible for everyone to take their own perspective on this issue. And it's our role to convene and meet and share and build this ecosystem together with all of you. So we're right now formally into a process of co-founding the foundation of IDGs, with Business Council for Sustainable Development, IMD, academic institutions in Sweden and elsewhere, and other organizations. And a lot of others are going in the same direction. One of the conclusions I think everyone is behind is what also was said by the independent panel of researchers for the UN. The change must be steered in positive directions by human determination. So it is us to do it. It's our own capabilities and how everyone's capabilities can be developed. That is the core. So in some simplified way, cartoonish way, we can see IDGs as not at all anything else than a significant fortifier and a driver, organic driver of the SDGs. It builds that commitment, opportunity, and power and people-powered futures around SDGs. It is also, in the words of Rayworth, bringing maybe, I always been thinking about what's in the middle of this donut. So one of the things that we see might be the IDG. So how our soul is part of it, our brains, our hearts, our relationships, and all those things. Actually, without those, it's very hard to get any of this to happen. And we also recognize this very clearly this year by the Club of Rome, both by the paper by Catherine Trebek that you may have seen, and then recently a new one coming out from IDG teams with Jamie and Rosie and Christine and Phoebe and Julia and Otto and Thomas, to look at also some other elements. And for me, they actually complement each other very well, these two reports. Because maybe the IDGs is a lot down in this structure mental model space around how we understand issues. We might see the elements of people's behaviors, people's relationships, and people's capabilities, and how we're relating to each other and to nature as actually in each of the other challenges we're trying to solve. The inner dimension, as Bristow in that report was speaking about, it's very hard to define in a very concise way because it's so much of what it means to be human. But of course, it's related to what is in us and outside. And this is a very artificial boundary. Like the skin is a very, very artificial boundary. Actually, inner and outer is actually very, very connected in all kinds of different ways. So how do we drive that transformation? How do we then use the inner to drive this transformation? What to see with respect to what is the outer challenges that is different but similar for everyone. So again, what our core question over the first couple of years has been is to try to find a way of describing what the human qualities, abilities, or skills seem to people to matter most for a successful, sustainable transformation towards a planetary well-being and well-being for all. We came up in the first framework with 5 dimensions. You can use your hand and see it. So it's being. It's really the question of our relationship to our own values and our inner core of who we are, what navigates us, and what is our relationship to ourselves. Thinking is a lot around complexity awareness, perspective taking, being able to work on systems transformation, systems analysis, and so on. Relating, of course, is that we matter for each other and for the places and the nature we're living in. Collaborating is, being able to come over some artificial separations around different cultures, different professions, disciplines. The split that we have in the rational mind spent a lot of time to separating. How do we come with those differences together to act together in favor of the current and the next generations across the globe and the nature in which we are all embedded? So I think that was a first opening.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And we are just getting started. So I don't want to take too much time. I can see some comments. We are going to have a discussion time towards the end. So Ray, Michael, please bring your comments towards the end of the conversation as well. But for now, we're going to go to Simon Ticehurst, who is our movements and advocacy lead at the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, and going to reflect on a lot of what Fredrik has mentioned and how this relates to the Wellbeing Economy mission, going from this inner development to outer change phenomenon. So Simon, are you there? if you can unmute, and I will
I am. Yeah, wonderful. What a wonderful introduction to this the system within the inner dimensions. And very nice to listen to you for the first time. I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to meet you before, Fredrik. But a wonderful introduction to this, and really important the work you're doing on inner development goals. And I love this idea of joining forces around IDGs, faith and spirituality more broadly, and well-being economies. And I, unlike you, Fredrik, I should clarify that I'm not an expert in the field of inner development at all, and I would probably put myself at the beginning, at a very early stage anyway, of exploration of what this means and why it's important for the sort of systemic transformation that we're seeking in our external world. And I think it's really important that this is a non-competitive journey, right? It's not a race, it's a journey of transformation rather than a race from A to B. So I think just a few points to comment on. One is related to the crisis of what we might call a historical paradigm of domination of man over women, of man over nature, of white over black, of West over East, Europe and the US over the rest of the world, have certainly failed to deliver. And now we're seeing, I mean, the report that you've shared is illustrative of that. No longer morally, economically, or environmentally sustainable. And I think the first thing, this is a multi-dimensional crisis across the nexus of the economy, society, and the environment. And I think the first idea is sort of like because the capitalist West has undervalued the importance of ancient indigenous spiritual traditions in general, and particularly from Asia, which in the case of Buddhism goes back 2,000 years, more than 2,000 years. Because of the shortcomings of this dismissive disdain of important spiritual practice, maybe this is why, the first reason why we need to explore a new way of seeing the world. And we might be missing out something very important in terms of the ability to influence change. We are connected with several faith groups, and the statistic that strikes me is that 85% of the world's population adhere to a religious or spiritual tradition with significant impact on how they define their values and how they participate in their communities and societies. So this idea of needing to see the world in another way, because the way we've been seeing, the dominant way of seeing the world, it has failed. So out of that failure, I think the importance is one of the sort of justifications for the importance of the inner dimensions. And then the other idea, which I reflected on the report, the system within, is how our inner dimensions, our conscious minds and our collective beliefs have actually shaped the current human systems. But at the same time, they're product of these systems, which mean that actually we can both help maintain and perpetuate these systems, but we can also change them. And I think that's a really powerful idea for this idea of more systemic, external systemic transformation. And actually for that, we need another way of seeing the world, less driven by ego, by pride, arrogance, and jealousy and competition, and more driven by harmonious connections and relationships with ourselves, with others, and with nature. There's a wonderful quote in the Systems Within report from Anais Nin, which reads, "We see the world as we are, not as it is. It is the I behind the I that does the seeing." So the question that the importance of inner dimensions for me is related to, is there another way of seeing? And I think I raise this because I had a sort of a breakthrough moment very recently. I was very fortunate to be invited last month to a retreat in Costa Rica by the wonderful Cristiana Figueres and the Global Optimism team. And the retreat was facilitated by the Buddhist monastics from Plum Village, who shared the teachings of Zen Buddhist master Thich Nhat Hanh. And the invitation there was to see how the way out is in. And if you Google that, that's a good starting point. And it's mentioned also in the report. I just wanted to share a couple of reflections that came out of this retreat for me that help explain why this dimension of these inner dimensions are so important for our work as WEAll. And the main idea for me, I think it's implicit in the 5 fingers of the inner dimensions, is we talk about the 5 WEAll needs, and one of those needs is connection. So the importance of connection, and it's often argued that the isolation, the separation, disconnection from others and from nature in a world of very fragmented collective identities and overrun by individualism is at the core of the current multi-dimensional crisis. And at the retreat, we heard from the Buddhist monastics that there is no self. It was a challenging thought for me. And the explanation is that without nature, without food, without water, without sunlight, we cannot exist. And hence the importance of the idea of interbeing. I mean, there are some other interesting statistics that I learned about, that we're not even human. In fact, of the 50+ trillion cells in our bodies, more than 50% of them are not human cells. So it's an interesting concept in terms of the idea of interbeing. And, even if the anthropocentric worldview might be the dominant one, it's not the only one. So there is another. I lived for many years in Bolivia, and the reverence of the Andean peoples for Pachamama is expressed in their language. It's expressed it's lived in their culture. And they cannot understand this separation, nor do they practice it. But the connection is not just with nature, it's also with our lineage. So the importance of our ancestral lineage and how we are intergenerationally connected. So, and indigenous worldviews have a very strong connection with both past and future generations. And this sense of connection and belonging is also understood to be a key factor in community well-being. This retreat was held at the Pachamama Center in the peninsula, the Guanacaste Peninsula in northwest Costa Rica. It's actually a blue zone, known for its extraordinary longevity and well-being, in part due to the reality of deep connection with both nature and community. So this idea of connection thinks is really important. It's one of the central needs that we talk about. But here's the catch. The restoration of a conscious connection with others and with nature and this awareness of interbeing starts with the inner self. And slowing down, disconnecting from our smartphones, which don't seem so smart after all, from our computers and from the internet, and being attentive to our breathing, to what we eat, and reconnecting with nature can all raise awareness immediately, very quickly. And I think the retreat, the monastics argued, and we had to put everything aside, that you can only look inwardly when you slow down and stop. And I think this is really important for the idea of how we behave and react to the external world. I mean, looking inwardly is important for this, because we react often impulsively and involuntarily, not badly. It's not judgmental, this, but because of how we've been programmed and in response to our collective beliefs. But certainly it's been the case, it's been my case at least. And in the world, this uncertain, quite depressing world, we're bombarded with despairing news of environmental destruction and climate breakdown, violence and war. And in reaction, our minds race to react to the suffering and the pain and the injustice and the unfairness. by believing we need to do more and more to fix the world. And in the way we react, we trigger emotions of anger and sadness, disgust, fear, and this is constant anxiety, which is actually leading to a sense of being overwhelmed. And at the same time, it drives ourselves to a sort of burnout through overwork. This permanent state of anxiety, and this is a reflection, but this is what was shared by the monastics. This sort of permanent state of anxiety crowds out the more benevolent emotions of joy and happiness, love and compassion. And if we look inwardly, we can be more aware of how we are reacting, and we can have more agency at the same time, much more control. There are many things we can't control. We can't control what happens in the external world, but we can control how we react to it. And this doesn't mean this doesn't mean disengaging and going off and living in a monastery. This is the monastics from Plum Village talk about engaged Buddhism. So maybe it's about rebooting how we engage. And this idea of burnout is something we've challenged with in our teams, I'm sure. But I'm struck by the levels of burnout in our sector. And this was true of all of the people who turned up at this retreat. They were at an advanced stage of burnout. And I think the ability to look inwardly and manage our emotions and reactions is key to being able to sustain the fight for external systemic transformation. And it's going to be a long, hard battle. And we need to not only capabilities that you've talked about, but greater resilience in that struggle. And I think the main message is we need to take care of ourselves. And taking care of ourselves starts with looking inwardly. And I'm surrounded by people that work endless hours, working weekends, foregoing lunch, breaks, and the important connections with ourselves and with our communities and with nature, all for a better world in some distant future. And I think we need to be more compassionate with ourselves. And in fact, we can't be more compassionate with others until we become more compassionate with ourselves. So for a number of reasons, I think this field is sort of like, yes, I could just say yes to it. I feel really encouraged by the work you're doing, Fredrik, and with Jamie as well. It's a wonderful report, let's take it forward from there. I think I've run out of time, probably as well.
Yes, thank you, Simon. Really appreciate that. There's so much to say on this topic, but really appreciate it. And we'll have more chats towards the end. So let's go straight to Fredrik, just so we can get to the participatory stuff.
Sure, totally. Thanks for Simon's super reflective and helpful comments. Well, one of the things that we certainly knew when we started this work was that we were few in the beginning, and we were northern, we were mainly men, we were mainly white. And that didn't mean that we didn't want to get engaged, but it meant that we knew what we didn't see. So the first framework in the IDGs was developed by the relationships we could reach out in 2020, 2021. And now what we know is that there's so much more wisdom out there. There's so much more wisdom, and we know that. Of course, we've read up and we have friends from everywhere. So, but the sheer opportunity to now reach so widely to 100 countries with hubs, with academic institutions that we work with in all continents and so on. So it's really a broad kind of spectrum of relationships in which we can open up and open the ears to try to understand what is the wisdom. Many of the things you shared, Simon, also lots of different understandings, like the conversations about Ubuntu or other kinds of ways of understanding this. That's been there forever. So again, in the similar kind of relationship to this book, I've been focusing a little bit about last couple of weeks, again, is that I really like what Malika Dutt said, that it's not that we've invented this. This has been there forever. We have to take the space back to listen to what's there and realizing that this is the way to turn it. So we never claim by the IDGs to be anything new. What we may be helping to do is to find a process where people can relate to these things and ideally learn and share, explore together between different parts within countries, within sectors, but also across. So I totally think that the new framework that I've been trying to sort of set in motion together with all the different people around the world, we want your help. We certainly need your help to bring your wisdom to this process. Basically, the first framework was based on the 1,000 people that we could easily reach to. They were representing 50 countries, but there is a lot more around the globe. So now, since last summer, basically, we've been in a process that will take us into 2025, the summit in October 2025, to gather data with people's inputs on what are exactly those things that they feel are critical qualities, abilities, and skills to drive towards the sustainable future for people and planet. And we have 13,000 people so far who have been putting input into this, and we're just continuing to gather more. We have a new survey, and we also want you, if you're interested in helping out in this space, you may be able to reach to different communities or organizations or so on who are also interested to have a conversation about this and join the global conversation. Please join us. We have found, and I think it's very much a structural element around access to, Toby and I have been many conversations about this, just the sheer costs of digital access in Africa, in many different African countries, makes it hard for people to spend time on digital surveys. So we're trying to find other approaches to reach other groups in Africa. But absolutely, those of you who are based in Africa, please help us even a little bit more to have the wonderful understanding and reflections from different countries in Africa. We have close collaborations with Kenya and also Tunisia and some other countries, but there are really a lot more that we can do. This is going to be one of the priorities for our coming half a year. So please join your own country conversations in this, and also help to share and participate when you're taking the survey, which you now are asked to do. It's developed together with my dear friend Daniel, who is on the call today, our CMO, and tries to improve of the, I guess, engagement. And we released it just a week ago, so you're one of the first crowds that we're testing it. So far, about 1,000 responses over that week, so it's going well. Please take some 10 minutes now to help us take the survey, and we'll continue the discussion after that. All right. Are you able to put that in this chat as well, Camilla? So perfect. 10 minutes, and you can just close down your screen or anything to spend some time on this survey, please.
Yes, so it is in the chat. So you can see a timer on your screen. We're just going to take a few minutes to do this. If you do not finish in the 10 minutes, please feel free to just carry on at a later stage. But we are going to, it's helpful for the discussion that you see some of what is asked in the survey, just to help kind of, process in your minds. And then it will help us then have a further conversation in terms of your thoughts and what's lacking and how we can continue to have this global conversation. I'll pop it in again. It is in the chat. Let's see. There we go. Jeanette, it's that one that I've just popped in now. Of course, if you don't have access, if you're on your phone and you can't do it now, that's also fine. We'd love to encourage you to stay just for the conversation we're going to have shortly. And while you do that, you can turn your cameras off if you want. I'm going to pop on some music if I can get it.
Get in the meeting.
Beautiful. And to repeat that again, you can continue and you can share this. And it sometimes it takes longer, sometimes very quick. So it's really, and you can, this is a qualitative study. So you can come back to this. We're just looking at the repertoire, the breadth of people's views and understanding the space. Tobilia, are you there?
Yes, I am. I just let you go ahead.
So
Great.
beautiful. Yeah. Should we spend a couple of minutes for some reflections from the call? And then I just have a few sort of call to action to take from here at the end.
Perfect. So yeah, this is the Q&A section. So please feel free to raise your hands, maybe a reflection on the survey, or a question that you might have just in terms of what Fredrik has shared in his presentation. I know there was one in the chat just asking if there is any connections with the UN. So maybe we can kick off with that question. I'm trying to go back up to see who asked that question. If you're still here, please feel free to unmute and share. It was Anwen Cooper. To what extent are the IDGs championed and supported by the UN? So that's one question. And then just let's pause and then get one more question from Roger in the meantime, just to warm things up as well.
That's great. Take that first.
Ahead, Roger.
It's a very similar question, actually, to Billy. I was wondering whether you had much connection with the Wellbeing Project, which is another big international initiative to try and catalyze changes in and increasing well-being for change makers and this sort of stuff.
Yeah, totally. So
and
in both
to
cases,
add to that,
yeah, sorry.
There was another question in the chat around often it's the same organizations in the room. So maybe towards the end of your answer, how are other organizations, how can they get involved too?
Totally. Yeah, no, in essence, we are having very good ongoing conversations with UN, but if you know UN, it's a very bureaucratic structure. So the formal ways of getting approved is something we're actually undergoing right now in the space of UNFCCC and conversations about innovations in the space of climate change transformation work. So but we also we've been invited to speak at several UN events, and we have been having UN representatives from UNDP and from many other parts in many of our calls. So yeah, we have a very friendly and very good conversation. Technically, in terms of technical endorsement, that's a very different process in the process of UN, as you know. So it's nothing we're at the moment. There is an internal understanding and a very strong idea about in the UN that these things may have to be focused on in the future of when the future summit comes up. So we're in those kind of conversations in different ways. But yeah, so the same for the future. Yeah, we are in conversations, not technically there, but we're in many conversations. Also, as you understand, we're a very wide network. So we also have many people who are working directly with UN or within UN who may not be involved in. I see Sarah, for example, from Australia, yes, on my screen right now, also deeply engaged in the UN Association for Australia. So yes, there are different kinds of relationships there. And that's true for everything. We are very much in the process of, I guess, activating this message and making everyone find how they can both benefit from bringing this on, but also reversely add to the wider pool of ongoing development. So that's true. I personally have a lot of relationships, for example, with OECD and others. So that's where they picked up a lot of this. Then we have to recognize that we have 4 years of existence. So it's new in that sense as an organization. There's also that we have been slightly reluctant to sort of boost about too much before we actually had a wider set of people's inputs and a wider network across the globe, because we felt we were very northern and we want to become much more relational to the rest of the world before we access in the conversation with UN. So those things are ongoing. Yeah. And they widely, yeah, no, we are truly we mean something when we're saying we're a part of the ecosystem and we want to be part of ecosystems. That's true for us. It's not, we don't see any value of the competitiveness that also is happening in the NGO sector sometimes. That's just part of the old school way of functioning. For us, it's bringing everyone together. This challenge is big enough for everyone to do all that they absolutely can. No need for competition in a negative way. Inspiration, yes, but not competition. Right.
Great. Yeah, so Ray
thank
can
you.
go, and then I want to add some questions
sorry.
to that as well.
Thank you, Fredrik. I just wanted to make a point, because I think it was either you or Ian who said, yes, we talk about the systems within, etc., but how do we use the inner to drive? And I've been in several IDG sessions over the years, and I always sense this sort of tension or this nervousness in the field, that people don't quite know, what am I going to do? What's inside of me that's going to change, etc. And I'm fascinated by this, because all of the knowledge and all of the science is actually there, which points to the fact that every single one of us in this room has a bigger game, has an intent that is actually inside of us, that is locked in our hearts. And when we say find the systems within, I just want everybody to know that the world you're seeing at the moment, you are constructing it. That is the science. And if you start to go down that road and find, how might I construct the world differently, then you will begin to construct it differently. And that is, in fact, the science. And I just wanted people to know that, because there's so many people around the world who are now doing that. And just to give you hope and just attenuate that field a little bit, to say, you have the power. Tap into what is your bigger game.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. What I also can counter with or add to that conversation, I really like this, not either or, but and perspective. I think there is also a need for a lot of people with coming from the sort of inner to outer change side to also start to realizing and understanding what's there in the outer change world. There's a need to also deeply understand the mechanisms of economies that you're addressing so well, and really seeing that. There was a great question. I just picked that, up from a colleague from Denmark, speaking about when I make the case of the inner part of the donut. I totally think that there is an element there where all these kinds of, basically the donut is indicators, and the living standards framework is also indicators. So it's a question of what takes us to where we want to go. Well, not just the metrics is important to track progress, but you have to find a way, working with your heart, your soul, your mind, your relationships, you're relating to each other, and the value and the ideas you want to bring about in the world as the driving force. So it's absolutely the souls, the hearts, the relationships, the minds that can do anything. So I think that's for me something. And of course, I came back to what you said in the beginning. I am trained as a psychologist, but I've also been doing a lot of economy and loads of other sciences. And I think it matters, once you start to understand the psychology of the human and all the dimensions to it, it's obvious that these things are there. It's in these eyes, it's in the way we're relating to the world matters, and it's absolutely central to bring about each other's capabilities together. And it's also important to me to bring the elements of collaboration, for example, together. Like if we have a significant element of fear and trauma experiences, of course, our chances to bridge new things have to be tackled. We have to overcome things to be able to re-engage in new relationship building. And someone had this beautiful comment that I really agree on, that sometimes when you put stuff simple to communicate it simply, you get this idea that there's a flow being thinking. It's not really the case. It's obviously a weave around this in very different ways. And that we can't really speak about one. It's not a linear relationship. It's really just a different set of things that we can devise in a particular way. Our framework is not intended as a top-down, like this is the thing or not. It's an invitation for exploration that helps us to maybe have a word. So I can ask Tobile, in the case of your part of South African culture, what is the way you're thinking about long-term visioning there? Well, that's when the culture really starts to matter. So we have to have a framework to just have words so we can start exchanging and learning about some stuff together. Then the depth and the local specification happens at some other level. So I think that's really important to me. Over to you, Tobile.
Thank you, Fredrik. I think if you can just close with some practical next steps. There's so many questions around how do I get involved? How do businesses contribute?
Where everything is put in our process is on our webpage, so innerdevelopmentgoals.org. You'll find a lot. I also wanted you to think, if you're interested in helping to further this conversation about the IDGs and the survey and so on, please feel free to add yourself to our forums, and we're gathering everyone from different countries together to see how can we take this on at a country level, also continental level, to work in exchange. Because we think that you can all, skipping some discussion pieces here. Daniel and I have also set up a process where we are working with inviting people to co-design a very simple process to bring the survey and the conversation about the inputs and the data into their own communities. So please come join us September 3rd. We'll put some information about the event later on our webpage to help us design a process. How could this process work if you're doing that at scale, for example, in your country, in your organization, or in your city, or your region? Also, of course, when you're taking the survey, you're going to get opportunity to participate in the digital side of our big summit event. And that allows you also to bring IDGs to your local community, to bring watch parties, to see what's happening from there, and add your own local conversations around it to that. And then I'm leading our research co-creation portfolio. So of course, I also have a very important opportunity to bring everyone who is interested in working with research in relevant spaces for this conversation in different ways. Could be everything from city planning to education systems to management systems, or where have you. We are having a researcher circle that is meeting about 200 people monthly, and we have a lot of thematic interest groups exploring this in particular fields. So please send a shout out to me. You find me also on LinkedIn if you want to, and we can connect there. And for you to bring your wisdom to us, and we to share what you know and what we know together. That's my hope. I think that's it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We are over time. I just wanted to check if, Simon, you have any last words to share before we go.
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful invitation, Fredrik. Thank you so much for all of that. A lot more to explore on this journey, and I love the way you framed it, Ray. This idea of the bigger game, and it reminded me. I read recently of a story, a parable from a Native American Cherokee grandfather talking to his grandson, and around this idea of how we can nourish more benevolent emotions of joy and compassion. And story goes something like this: that the grandson is explaining to the grandfather is explaining to his grandson. He says, "My son, there is a battle between two wolves inside of us. One is evil. It is anger, jealousy, greed, resentment, inferiority, lies, and ego. And the other is good. It is joy, peace, love, hope, humility, kindness, empathy, and truth." And the boy reflects on this for a while, and then asks his grandfather, "Grandfather, which wolf wins?" And the old man replies quietly, "The one you feed." So, amazing. Closing thought.
Love that, Simon. A big heart emoji to you. And a huge heart emoji to everybody on this call. I really appreciate your time, and we never have enough time for these discussions. So I think the call to action is, let's keep having them. Invite us to your spaces, you come to our spaces, the more the merrier. And as Fredrik was saying, that this is not a competition, we have to work together. So would love you to join the IDGs for their further conversations. I think Daniel has popped more links in the chat and their contact details, so you can engage directly. We will also be sharing this recording, so you can share with other people that might be interested, as well as the presentation, so that you can have one more glance at it if you want. And I'm also sharing in the chat, if you want to become a member of WEAll, we have these talks every month, but we also have members discussions. We have working groups on certain topics, if it's health and a wellbeing economy, or a care economy, or beyond growth, and these types of topics that help us have this pluralistic view of the transformation needed in the world. And if you just want to amplify your voice and be part of these conversations, we also have a digital platform called WEAll Voices. You can join and click the link that I've shared there. But thanks to everybody. A huge thank you to you, Fredrik, and the IDGs, even Daniel, for being such a warrior on the chat. I really appreciate it. And hopefully you connect with one another. Get the links in the chat as well. Follow each other on LinkedIn, and let's keep the conversations going. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good evening or day, wherever you are. We'll see you soon, hopefully.